So today I'm here to talk to you about how to build a communication plan that's going to work for your office. My name is Cheryl Pederzoli. I'm on the marketing team here at ProSites, and I've been working with physicians and dentists and doctors for years now. And this is one of those topics that's such a big part of your practice that I want to make sure you guys know how to do it and how to do it the best way you possibly can. So today, what we're going to go over is why do you need a plan, how do you build a plan, some tips to make it more effective, and then we'll talk a little bit about automation and how that's going to make things a little bit more efficient for you. So the major goal of any communication or really marketing plan is to attract potential patients, convert them into being your patient, and then retain them for as long as you possibly can. Think about where you spend a lot of your time today, and let's see if that's where we really should be aligning all of our efforts as we go through this. So if you're like most practices, most of the time in the budget you have is spent on attracting new patients. I've actually only encountered a couple of dentists who will tell me they already have all the patients they need. So a lot of people spend a lot of time and money here. Some of the common tactics that are getting used are having an online presence, so your website, being found on search engines, doing online advertising, being active on social media, having office signage, newspaper ads, or direct mail advertising, kind of their typical marketing that you hear about. On average, what we find is that dental offices spend about $500 per month on marketing. And this is an average number over a survey that we did last year. So you can see there's a lot of money and effort behind your marketing and trying to attract patients. The next goal that most people have is how to convert them. So if you spend hundreds of dollars to be found, to have somebody look for you on those advertisements that you're doing, you want to make sure once they get there, you turn them and you actually get them engaged and have them become that patient. So some of the things that we recommend is making sure you have all the answers they could need on your website. It could be as simple as making sure they can find your office hours or directions or the bio of your dentist in your office. It's important to have all that information. We also highly recommend you talk about all the different services that you offer because that also will keep somebody or turn them off. You also want to make sure that when somebody is engaged, you answer the phone when they call. Have a live person on that. Have references available if you need them. We have a lot of doctors who find huge success with having a lot of good, strong online reviews and then using social media help reinforce that. So if you think about the cycle that somebody's going to go through when they're trying to find a new dentist or a new doctor, they're going to start out by looking and saying, okay, who's available in my area? And then they're going to try to get validation before they say, yep, that's the person that I really want to talk to. So that conversion is really important, trying to make sure that they find you, but then they stick with you. We find that 88% of online shoppers incorporate reviews into their decision, and this is even more important in healthcare, where it's such a personal relationship between that patient and the doctor. So reviews are one of the more critical things that we find nowadays that are really helping doctors keep patients and bring patients in the door. So the last goal is retaining patients. And what's amazing about this step is if you can do it, it's going to have the most profound impact on your practice. It's going to keep patients. It's going to make you guys profitable. The common tactics are making sure you have appointment reminders, recalling patients back when it's time to get them in, talking about their birthday and sending out holiday messages, Happy New Year, things like that. And then newsletters that just keep them in touch with you as a practice, keep them feel connected. And you can use those also to reinforce when you might have something new coming up, a new service you offer, changes that people need to know about in the industry, things like that. If you guys didn't know already, it's 5 to 10 times cheaper to keep a current patient than acquire a new one. Now, this is why this is such an important part of your communication strategy, because if you can keep somebody, that $500 you spend a month may not need to be so high. You might be able to actually reduce that spend and be able to actually be more profitable. Why it's important to have a plan? Henry Schein did a little survey in 2015, and they found that if if dentists are able to have patients meet the standards of care that are prescribed, making sure they get in every time that they're supposed to, for all of the active patients they have, there's an opportunity to make an additional $241,000 for the practice, simply by keeping all of their existing patients coming in when they're supposed to. It's an amazing opportunity by just getting them back in the office. So next, let's talk about how do you build a plan? What do you incorporate? What are the communication channels? Things like that. So when you build any plan, it's great to have a checklist of how to get going. So you want to start by defining your goals. Think about all the channels that are available to you. Understand the resources that you have, your financial and your human resources. Prioritize and then execute. So let's talk about all of these a little more. So we talked about the most common goals: attract, convert, retain. If these are not your goals, or if you have something else, think about that, and then think about what types of communications are going to support that. Different channels. I'm going to walk through all of them so you understand what all of the options are, and then kind of how it all ties together in a comprehensive plan. So starting with phone calls, voicemails, these are best used for those two-way communications, those conversations that you just need to have two different people talking at the same time. Especially anything involving HIPAA information. You can't really use very many channels for that. Live phone call is the one to go. These are great for appointment reminders, telling people they need to come back in because we haven't seen you in a while, things like that. It's a great personal communication. Some of the drawbacks, though, is it can be very labor-intensive and time-intensive. And one of the challenges if you're doing them live is that you typically make those calls during that patient's working hours. So they can't always talk to you. They can't take your call and say, oh, yes, I understand. Let me schedule that now. Or, yep, I'll be there tomorrow. So there is some drawbacks to just relying on phone calls and voicemail. One of the tips, though, that we like to share is that if you can automate your reminders, you can actually schedule them after hours. So it's more likely that the person will answer and respond to it if you're able to call them in the evening when they're actually available to take those calls. Next communication channel available is text messaging. Now this is really just starting to become very popular with doctors' offices. You can send out confirmations that say, thank you for scheduling your appointment, this is when it's going to be. You can send reminders the day before, the same day, saying, hey, can't wait to see you at 3 o'clock today, making sure that people have this top in mind. Text messages, they're short, they're unobtrusive, people are used to looking at them and getting back to you. You can actually schedule them too so that you can reply back to confirm the appointment if it's something that's a week in advance. And then there are some systems that allow for you to have two-way communication. So if the person does need a text back, it'll kind of ping the office and say, hey, this person wants to communicate back and forth with us. The drawbacks, it could get costly depending on what system you're looking at. Not everybody has a phone number that's going to be able to take these types of communications. They may give you a landline instead of giving you a mobile number. So you may have some fails there. One of the things that we do recommend as a tip is if you are going to be using these automated communications, make sure that you only have people confirm appointments. If they need to reschedule, you really want them to call the office, not just hit reply on a text message. The next communication channel I just wanted to touch upon is email. Email is a great way to get messages out, get marketing out, share with people what it is that your office does, or even just give them a quick little, hey, you've got an appointment next week, just a reminder. It's really more a channel you have to be careful with because you can't send HIPAA information via email unless you have an encrypted email, so you need to just be careful on that side. But the great thing is you can put links into things, you can link them to your website, you can link them out to a review site and say, hey, go review us after your appointment. There's a lot of different things that you can do with it. One of the recommendations that we make is after somebody visits your office, send them out an email that says, hey, thanks, it was great to see you. If you had a great service, we'd love for you to review us online. Here's the link to whichever site that you prefer they put the reviews on. The next channel I want to talk about is direct mail. You don't see as many people using direct mail anymore, so it actually does stand out a lot more than it used to. It's great for patient retention, sending out reminders or recalls. If you have any big announcements, new location, insurance changes, cards, it catches people's attention. If they've got a piece of mail, they can take it, they can stick it on the refrigerator, they can put it on their desk. They can actually have it visible to remind them to come in. There is a little bit more cost associated with it, and it's hard to know if somebody is really getting it and actually doing something with it. But overall, we do find that people are getting great response with direct mail, so we encourage people to still do this. One of the things that we recommend people do too is if you're not getting them to respond to text messages or emails or even phone calls, sending them out a postcard that says, hey, call the office, it's time to schedule an appointment. It's a great way to reach people if you can't get them via any other channels. Now, last one I want to talk about for channels is social media. Social media is one of those channels that I think we realize that everybody is out there. Actually, 69% of adults use social media, but there's a little hesitation to use it in healthcare because of the concerns about HIPAA and privacy and things like that. You don't need to worry as long as you're really careful about what you're doing. So it's great for marketing your practice, engaging your patients, ones that are there with you today, and letting them know that you've got something new going on in the office, or posting up pictures about your office if you've got big events. There's also a lot of people who are doing reviews on Facebook, out there on those channels. So if you're getting reviews, you can respond to them. You can say, thanks for coming in, it was great to see you, or I'm sorry you had a bad experience, I'd love to talk to you about it and understand more, and so we can correct it. So it's important to have social media, at least a very basic presence for things like that. You can also do some information where you collect information about patients by using polls or surveys, which is kind of a cool idea. If you wanted to throw out something like, hey, we're thinking about moving, is this location good, or just different ideas like that. People are on social media all the time, so it's a great channel to be out there. You can get back to people quickly with answers to their questions. Typical things that we might see are, what are your office hours, that kind of stuff. You get a lot of great reviews, so that's great. The drawback, it could be time consuming. You need to understand how social media works, especially when you're talking about privacy and sharing things, and just making sure that you're not oversharing. And in order to really do it right, you do need to stay on top of it. You need to watch it. One of the tips that we give people is make sure you always respond to reviews. And that's really going to be about making sure that people understand that they're being heard, and that if something is wrong, you care, you want to address it. So that's one of those tips, is make sure you always respond to reviews, whether it's positive or negative, whether it's thank you or I'd love to talk to you more and learn what's going on. So when you're building the plan, though, the good, the bad, and the ugly, no one channel works for everybody. You guys probably already know that. If you think to your personal life, if you're going to talk to, like my case, if I talk to my dad, I call him on the phone. If I'm talking to my daughter, I text her. If I talk to a coworker, I send email. There's no one channel that works for everybody, and that's the same when you're communicating with your patients. So trying to be able to be flexible and being able to use multiple channels to communicate with people is going to make your plan more successful. So here's kind of a typical layout. This is just a basic of how to think about your communication plan. So if we start on the left-hand side, this is when you think about how are you going to attract new patients. So say a patient searches dentist in whatever town you're in. So you want to make sure that you show up on the search results. In order to do that, so I'm looking at kind of that dark blue box, you want to make sure you think through the tactics that are going to contribute. So you want to have a strong website that's going to show up. It's going to have information about your location, so when somebody searches certain keywords, it pops up properly. You also may want to think about having some search engine optimization, which is really going to help you show up very specific keywords. Make sure you claim directory listings, so if somebody searches, you show up on Google Maps where you're supposed to be with all the information about your practice. So you think through at each step, what is it that you need to support your plan? So patient visits your website. You want to have all the information they might need on there. How do you schedule an appointment? What services do you offer? What hours do you have available? The patient may look you up on Facebook to see if there's any reviews, or maybe any one of the other review sites. So you want to make sure your plan has you covered as far as having a presence on that social media channel, and it has the information that you need. If patient likes what they see, they're going to give you a call. So moving on to the next step, you want to make sure that that receptionist answers with a really warm greeting, has availability. Good verbal communication skills is super important. So you want to make sure they get the training that they need in order to communicate that enthusiasm, that warmth, and is able to really take that person and convert them, make them a patient, get them on the schedule. She's going to take the contact information, including mobile phone and the email, so that you can send out the appointment reminders before that appointment. You can use email. You can do a robotic call. You can send out text messages. There's lots of different options. Those are all part of your communication plan. What does that text message say? What is that robotic call going to say? Those are the things that are part of your communication plan you need to think through. Then your patient visits the office. Is there something special that you want to do when they come in to greet them as a new patient? Do you want to give them a special welcome to the practice letter or a packet of information about you? And then after they visit, you want to send out a message saying, thank you for coming. It was great to see you. You know, in this case, I put down an email, but maybe if they're a brand new patient, you want to say, actually send a physical thank you letter to them. So there's lots of different things. And if you think through every step and what type of communication you need, that will help you build that plan that's going to be the most effective. Same thing when we're talking about retaining a patient. This is just kind of a sample outline of ways you can do this and try to retain your patient. So you know that they're in the practice management system. They get those automated communications. You may want to send them an email one day after your appointment thanking them and requesting a review. And then maybe a month later, they get an e-newsletter that just shares tips and office updates. Every once in a while, they get another newsletter, and that's going to just make sure that you keep them connected to you. They feel loyal to you. They're building a relationship with you. Afterwards, when it's time to get another appointment scheduled, if they don't already have one, they should get a text or an email or postcard encouraging them to give you a call. If they haven't responded, then we go to another avenue. What's the next thing? Maybe it's a phone call, a person phone call as opposed to a robotic call. And then they go through those reminder steps again with, you know, here's your text, your appointment's in a week, here's the next one, your appointment's tomorrow, all of those different things. So again, you look through all the steps that's going to happen, and you think about what those communications are that you're going to want. So pulling it all together. Once you've figured out what your goals are and which channels you want to use, you have to talk about what your resources are available to you. You have to prioritize them, and then you have to figure out how to execute on them. So when you think about the financial and the human resources, you want to think about what's your marketing budget, what's your communications budget. It might be two different separate ones. Think about how much time do you have in staff hours? Does your staff have time to be managing a Facebook account? Well, maybe they don't, but maybe you have a little bit of money you can spend for somebody else to manage that Facebook account for you. Or the same thing with phone calls, your reminders and your recall messages. If you have a staff member who's doing that now, you could potentially free up hours and hours a week by moving to an automated solution and then reallocate that staff member to help with your new patient marketing instead. So you want to balance it. This is just kind of a sample outline of a way you could start it, but you really need to go back and think about what's right for your practice and then kind of work from there. So next, a couple tips that I'd love to share with you about communications. One of the most important things is to have a practice personality. What is that image that you want to present to somebody? The best way I found to do this over the years is to actually picture who that person is. I have a person in my head that works at our company right now, and she, to me, is the epitome of what our personality is. She's got this great attitude. She's always smiling. She's always open. She wants to share with people. That's who my personality is in my head when I think about who we are. Find that same one in your practice. Understand what that personality is, and then make sure that is the personality that comes through in every communication. So not just the person who's answering the phone, You want them to have that same attitude. But when you talk on social media, you want that to come across the same way. If you're on your website, you want that to come across the same way. You want to be consistent throughout. So it doesn't seem like you're a practice where you've got all kinds of different people, different personalities. You want it to be consistent experience because that's what people are going to remember. So you just want to make sure that everything's consistent and has personality. The next one, make sure you put as much information online about your practice, because when patients are looking for information about you, they're going to go to your website. When new patients, people you're not working with yet, want to learn about you, they're going to go to your website. So you want to make sure you have lots of great content out there. The other benefit is having a lot of good content is also going to help with your search engine listing placements. So if people are searching on certain keywords, like instead of searching on dentists in your town, they might be looking for teeth whitening in your town. Well, if you've got a page up on your website about the teeth whitening services that you offer, that's going to make you more likely than the next dentist to show up in that search result. So it's important to make sure you have that content, not just for people, but also for search engines. Another tip is making sure that you're aiming to have a two-way communication. A lot of times people blast out information, but they don't listen and respond back. So if you're sending out a confirmation to people, make sure not only do you say, hey, your appointment is tomorrow, give them that feedback loop so they can say, yes, I know I will be there. If you're going to be doing something on social media, don't just post things on your page. Make sure you're reading what people are posting back, whether they're making comments about you, whether they're tagging you in different things. You want to make sure it's a two-way dialogue. And then always tell people what you want to do next. So if you're sending out a newsletter, the newsletter shouldn't just say, hey, this is great information about us. It should also say, call me today so we can schedule your appointment for your tooth whitening, or have that next step so they know what the expectation is. Make sure you include that also. If somebody's not going to be coming back, ask them why not to. If they're not scheduling an appointment, it's important to understand, because that's going to be what helps you grow your practice. Is there something that you guys did wrong? Is there something you can change to help retain more patients? Next tip is automate patient communications. One of the things that we find is that there's a lot of dentists already using automated, but there's a lot of them that aren't. And if they are, they might not be using a solution that actually encompasses multiple channels. That's where we find that somebody may be using phone reminders, but not using text reminders yet. That's a huge place where there's such a potential to help get more people in the seat. So if it's not already there, make sure you incorporate it so that they have all these different options. Use a multi-channel approach, and automating your system makes that so much easier. It requires very little additional work to add in that second phone number that's a mobile phone number or an email address, but it pays off dividends down the line. Next tip is use social media. I know people are resistant to it, but when we look at what's going on right now, 80% of dentists are using it. So we want to make sure that you guys understand that this is an important part of your overall strategies, incorporating some level of social media. There's a lot of people out there using it, and it's important. The next tip, you have to be careful with HIPAA-sensitive information. You guys all know that. You probably have gone through your HIPAA training within the last couple of months. It's important to remember, though, that while we talk about all of these different channels, you really should only be talking directly to the person about HIPAA-sensitive information. Those things that you're told you can't leave on a voicemail call, it's the same thing. You can't do it in email. You can't do it on social media or other non-secure channels. So just be careful what information you're leaving, and understand that not all patients want you communicating in all different channels, and know your different patients. So the last couple of things I just want to cover is kind of the benefits of automation. We've talked about so many different ways to communicate with people, so many different channels to use. Well, automating things makes it easier because it incorporates a lot of those channels, and it makes it so you don't physically have to call somebody on the phone and say, oh, nope, I can't get through this way. Now let me get out and type a letter and send the letter off to them, or now let me do this. Automating is actually going to make it so the system determines what's the channel to go next, how do I get out there and reach them and do things. So it's a system that interacts with your practice management, reaches out to automatically let them know about this, and it has all those different things in there, your email address, your text numbers, your phone call numbers, your address if we're sending physical mail, and it's going to be using those. The benefits of automation, what we find is the no-show rate decreases almost 23% after a dentist sets up an automated reminder system. It's a huge, huge increase. It reduces your staff time. You're more consistent in your message, and your staff doesn't have to call. If the staff's not in, if they're sick one day, if they have vacation days and those calls don't get through, you have an increased chance of no-shows that day because the reminder calls didn't go. But with an automated system, it's still happening. It doesn't matter. We actually find with Practice Mojo, on average, they send out about 1,500 communications a month per customer, and it saves about a week's worth of work. It's a huge amount of work that then you can have that staff member doing other things like marketing your practice to bring in new patients. The other thing is it just right amount. We've gone through a lot of different years of work on this and know when the right time to do these reminders are. And because we're going through all the different channels that are available, we reach 100% of the patients via whatever channel is the most appropriate for them. So that's kind of the benefits of automating as opposed to just trying to do all of these different things on your own. So before we jump into the question and answers, I just want to launch one quick poll here, which is just, do you want to learn more about the different services that we have here? Automating your recalls and reminders, having a stronger dental practice website, or online marketing services. This is just so we know who should get a call afterwards. We'd just like to ask them up front. So to remind you guys now, if you do have any questions, we've got a question and answer available. You can actually type in your question. You probably see a question mark button on your GoToWebinar toolbar. So just click on that. You can type in the question and send it in. And I will just sit a minute here to see if we've got anybody who has a question for us. We're running a little short on time. I was trying to keep this to 30 minutes, so I won't stick around too long. Okay. Looks like nobody popping in yet, so I'm going to conclude the webinar and say thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm with ProSites and Practice Mojo. We offer online marketing services, automated recalls and reminders, lots of different things to help you really take your practice to the next level. If you want more information, you can go visit our website. You can give us a call, or you will actually get a reminder email tomorrow, not a reminder email, a thank you email tomorrow. That's going to have links to all of the slides, so you can actually download all the slides so you have those yourself, and it's also going to have the video link so you can watch that again. And I think that actually answers the question that somebody asked, which is how do we print a few pages? You'll get that link tomorrow so that you can download all of that. So I want to thank you for joining us, and I really appreciate it. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.